What's up, Internet, and welcome back to the Engadget Podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devindra. This week, I'm joined by podcast producer Ben Elman. Hey, Ben.
Hey, everybody.
This week, it's kind of all about the thing we have been expecting for a while. The Department of Justice has confirmed that it really wants Google to sell Chrome, and this follows the news where they ruled that essentially that Google had a search monopoly. We've been talking about that for a better part of this year, actually. So that decision is down. We were all kind of expecting it, and also Android may be a part of this as well. We'll dive into all of it, and also why none of this will probably ever happen. As always, folks, if you're enjoying the show, please be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. Leave us a review on iTunes. Drop us an email at podcast@engadget.com. We also do a live stream Thursday mornings around 10:45 a.m. Eastern. Join us. It's a fun time. I'm looking at folks right now in the chat. And yeah, you'll find, we have video on demand recordings of that stuff too. But sometimes we'll do Q&As. Sometimes we'll show off gadgets and things like that. Ben, we have been talking about this thing for a while, and I've been fishing around to get some legal experts to join us at some point. But at this point, we can say the Department of Justice has officially said that it wants Google to sell off Chrome, and Google has responded in a way too. Google is saying this is a staggering proposal that would harm consumers and affect U.S. Tech leadership, as Google would say.
Yeah,
So
tech leadership because you don't own your browser anymore.
Well,
Sure.
because it would be bad for America and it would be bad for the technology world if Google did not own Chrome. But to recap, folks, this goes all the way back to the ruling that Google was a search monopoly. And that came down to that Google was paying companies billions of dollars, including Apple. The report was $20 billion in 1 year to make Google search the primary search on their operating systems. So that was a thing the government could not really abide. But this was also the DOJ and also the FCC under the Biden administration, which was a lot stronger regulatory wise. We've talked a lot about Lena Khan and what she's been doing at the FTC as well. And that stuff is just going to go away. It's going to evaporate like tears in the rain with the incoming Trump administration, which is pretty much there's a great piece by Carl Bode over at Techdirt that I think everybody should read. It's called Net Neutrality is Dead as a Doornail Under Trump 2.0. And that's pretty much it, because we've talked about the Biden administration sort of was making room. The rule that could have reenacted net neutrality was a thing that they restored this year, but it's been held up in court. So we never actually got proper net neutrality back in this country. And that's the idea that, ISPs, they're basically couldn't make up their own rules about how they managed their networks, about how they charged people. Yeah, it was kind of a mess. Do you remember that whole
Oh, yeah.
conversation, Ben?
No, I
Yeah.
I absolutely remember it, and the thing that I'm thinking of right now is
Mhm.
if you were on Reddit circa, I don't know, the late 2010s, or no, not late 2010s, excuse me,
Mhm.
late aughts through
Late aughts,
maybe the
yeah.
mid 2010s, every time people started talking about net neutrality, this photoshopped flyer
Mhm.
from one of the telecom companies. It's an imagined flyer from one of the telecom companies saying, here's your bundle. If you pay just $5 more, you get access to X and Y websites. Talking about data caps also.
Mhm.
And that never came to fruition. So just to play the other side here, why is this different? Because
Mhm.
I'm confused. It feels very much like the Looney Tunes situation of tearing down the posters. It's duck season, it's rabbit season, it's duck season, it's rabbit season.
Mhm.
Net neutrality is dead or alive. Why is this different? Or is it
Well,
different?
I just brought up the net neutrality thing in terms of regulation, but
Mhm.
the big topic right now is regulation and what a future Trump administration would do when it comes to regulation of, big technology companies, of companies in general, of the telecom industry, and in general, it seems like all signs point to regulation not being a thing anymore. I think even related to this, relate to the Google divesting of Chrome. Trump made a comment. He says, "You could do what you could do without breaking it up is make sure it's more fair." End quote. I don't know what that means, but fairness,
That sounds
according
like
to
self-governance to me.
That sounds like the free market, just letting everything kind
The
of
invisible
land where they
hand.
may. Um, so that's kind of where we are right now, and just the idea of Google divesting of Chrome is something like we have brought up, and we've talked about the like mental model of that. And the only way that would have happened is if we existed in a country that was like very strong regulatory wise and had a lot of consumer protections. And basically, it seems like where we're headed is that consumer protections in general, all the good things we've been hearing about from the FTC, just aren't really going to be a thing right now. The Tech Dirt article like had a really good list of things. Things like policing data caps. I think we brought that up at some point. Stopping companies from like ripping you off in many ways. The whole thing about if you subscribe to something easily online, you should be able to unsubscribe from it.
Mm,
All of those kinds of things are not going to be a big deal because, at least from the conservative model, consumer protections just shouldn't exist. They just don't help anybody. So it
I
sounds
think it's yet
scary.
to be seen whether or not we're going to get to a world
Mhm.
that the imagined telecom flyer that was often posted on Reddit
Yeah.
was showing us, though.
I mean, probably that was just a whole scary thing.
Yeah.
Um, so the DOJ's arguments for Google selling off Chrome is essentially like they want to open up the market a little bit and stop giving Google so much power when it comes to the control over the search industry in general and probably the advertising industry as well. But Google's comments on this are just so let me see here. Google had like their lawyer, Ken Walker, president of global affairs and the chief legal officer, uh, gave language that really sounds like he is speaking to Donald Trump. Like the
Mm.
incoming, "Hey, Mr. Donald Trump." Here's from his letter. The DOJ had a chance to propose remedies related to this issue. In this case, distribution agreements with wireless carriers. Instead, DOJ chose to push a radical interventionist agenda that would harm
Uh,
Americans and Americans' global technology leadership. DOJ's wildly overbroad proposal goes miles beyond the court's decision. It would break a range of Google products, even beyond search, that people love and find helpful in their everyday lives because we love our Google. Guys, everybody loves Google. Nobody's pissed off about Google search getting progressively worse, being hard to find, finding things, or how shitty Gemini is in general. There's a bunch of bullet points. It would endanger the security and privacy of Americans. One that I found really interesting, it would chill our investment in artificial intelligence. Think about Google's investment in artificial intelligence,
Google's
everybody.
investment in putting artificial intelligence first on their Google searches when it isn't actually all that useful.
Think of the tens of billions of dollars that Google has spent on artificial intelligence. Won't you think of that? They're saying it's perhaps the most important innovation of our time, where Google plays a leading role. Don't quite believe that. They also bring up this thing that we talked
Wait,
about.
wait. I
Yeah.
just saw another thing that said, "Hurt innovative
Yep.
services like Mozilla Firefox,
I was going to
whose
bring that up.
businesses depend on Google." Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to bring that up because we have talked about this. We've talked about the idea that it is wild that a large chunk of Mozilla's revenue, the nonprofit Mozilla, comes from
And when
charging
we
Google.
talk about a
Yeah,
large chunk, we're talking about, like,
90%.
80%? Yeah,
Yeah.
like, a ridiculous amount.
So basically, Mozilla as an organization depends on it charging Google for this stuff, and now Google can turn around and be like, "Hey, you're going to hurt Mozilla if we can't charge Google for search placement." So yeah, that's kind of the world we live in right here. And I totally see like Google's response, and I see like the tech industry at large. Like, certainly the libertarians are like not super cool with the idea. Don't worry, guys, it's never going to happen. It really won't happen. Not in the upcoming administration when it comes to regulation, but also everything that we're seeing. The Trump folks aren't even in office yet, but from their plans, it does seem like the Supreme Court is already stacked in their favor. Federal appointees are going to be there for a long time too, coming as part of this administration. It's going to be years, probably decades, before we can like really wade through all this stuff and like, I don't know, bring actual like regulation that could help consumers back. So that's kind of a dark time we're entering, Ben. I don't know how you feel about this.
Um,
It's not
I
good.
I really don't like to think that it would be decades, but,
It would be a while unless basically unless the opposition to conservatives, unless Democrats started really being strong about how they used power and wielded power and pushed regulation in general. But there are things you can't stop, right? If the Supreme Court, which is already already like conservative pact, right? Unless you expand that court or do other things to kind of give future Democratic leadership more ability to regulate these companies, we're just going to have them run free reign. And that's really worked well over the past few decades, folks.
I
Yeah.
do think that like seeing how lawless this new administration is
Hmm.
posed to be, that there could be an increased appetite for, very sweeping changes like packing the court.
Yeah.
But that is literally just me being optimistic, perhaps. So in this like
Hmm.
list of bullets of talking about why this is like why selling Chrome is bad for Google, it's pretty predictable. It's saying, look,
Yeah.
it's going to hurt us. We can't possibly do this. And the moon in the chat says literally every company would say that. And it's true.
Yes. It's true.
Literally every company has said this, all the way back to the trust busting movement of the 20th century, all the way back to the labor movement, also in the 20th century. We can't have an 8-hour workday. All of the businesses would go under then.
We can't have weekends.
Yeah.
We can't have children not work in our factories. Think of the production of the American
Their
economy.
tiny little hands, they're so good at getting into the machines as they're running.
This is America. Like, this is in general the history of America and the history of capitalism in general, right? Like fighting against any rules to constrain things. So yeah.
Okay, but let's
Yep.
talk about the gadget angle of this.
Hmm.
So let's say Chrome is sold off. Does that mean Chromebooks? Let's say that Android is also spun off.
The Android thing, by the way, is very particular. The Android thing is if Google cannot stop doing the thing where they're basically making Android, where they're making people pay them to make Google the default in Android phones. If they don't cut that out, the government's like, well, you should also sell off Android. So that's
So
more of
that's
like an
like a
even more
thick
hypothetical thing.
stipulation. It's
Yes.
like, if you don't do this, then we're also going to come for your mobile division.
Which I think that would be a far bigger deal. Like Android is the thing. Android is sort of it's like the Windows of the smartphone world, right? It is the thing that powers a multitude of devices from other companies. Google absolutely took the Windows PC model there to do that. That would be earth-shattering for Google. Chrome is just like, well, it's a browser a lot of us use. It's a very popular browser. I also could easily see how like you could just like carve that off and let that go off and be its own thing. And I think that could actually end up being better for Chrome because the problem with Chrome right now is that it is so bogged down with Google garbage. Um, I
How
don't
does
remember when
Chrome make
Chrome was
money
getting
then?
sweet.
How does
That's
Chrome
a
make
good
money then?
question. That's a good question. I'm not a business person. There could potentially be deals or other things Chrome could do. I am not sure how browsers make money in general, but that's up to these companies to figure out. The way Google does it right now is Chrome pays for itself because it leads people back to Google products. It leads people back to Google search. It serves people Google ads. So
Because how
what
long
would
has
it
it
be?
been since we had a dedicated company that
Mhm.
does a browser and just a browser?
I mean, they're
Forget the fact
again Mozilla,
Yeah, but forget the fact that
Opera,
Mozilla is pretty much a, like, vassal state to Google. We're talking about Opera. We're
Opera.
talking about,
Which
like,
charges people a minimal fee, I believe, for browsers. So that was the whole thing. Yeah.
okay, and how much market share does it have?
Not much. But that's the thing. If you the whole reason for a big part of what the DOJ has been saying too is like Google is so powerful, it has also made Chrome so powerful because it owns searches and could put all its funding into this browser, which is free, sure, but which sort of dominates the landscape in a way that is uncompetitive. And it's a hard argument to make too. It's like the thing with Microsoft in the 90s. That was the antitrust hearing there was about including Internet Explorer within Windows, and that was in an era where Netscape was like, "Hey, we have to charge people $30." I think I remember spending $30 for Netscape at some point when I was a teenager to get that thing, and Netscape was like, "That's anti-competitive because Microsoft can just dump their thing in here for free. Google can just dump in Chrome for free or make it available, make it a core part of the Android experience, right?" And that just spreads its footprint and doesn't really give people options. It's the thing. Like options exist, but it's hard for them to survive because you're right, Ben. How does a browser make money? Yeah.
Yeah, it I don't think we've seen that in the modern era.
Hmm. I think in general, people are going to have to get used. If you like something, there was the AI browser that we have talked about. There are a couple others which offer like a cleaner. I have not explored many of the other browsers either, but you pay a minimal fee and you get to some things too. So you get to like some other browser options.
Well,
That
and then there's a question of, okay, does Chrome spin
mhm.
out on its own and become Chrome Inc., or does it potentially get like sold to something else? Is it a possibility that, I don't know, a bunch of other tech companies could form some kind of consortium to buy Chrome and, I don't know, fight over it via like that
That
financial
that may
instrument
be
or
another
something?
way too. That may like Google cuts off a limb, right, and the others start fighting over it.
Hmm.
I was thinking like, you don't want like Microsoft to just go and buy this, right? You want to have
Yeah.
some like stipulations against that too. And Microsoft is also very wary about any more like antitrust stuff.
Yeah.
So these are open questions. I would love to see it. Or I would love to like know how a company like that could survive, but also that this stuff, like the breaking up of AT&T, Ma Bell into like Baby Bells, was that in the 80s? That definitely helped to spread, it helped lower prices, it increased competition, like, it made it easier for people to get long distance service, I believe, and just phone service in general. There when we talked about that, there were arguments that that may have held back innovation a little bit, like, the ability to make phone lines faster for internet was maybe slowed down a little bit because it wasn't like a giant AT&T anymore, but at the end of the day, like, we survived, and I think overall people had more options, and if you hear like one thing from our podcast and that we keep talking about, competition always makes this stuff better, right? It helps Apple to have Google in the Android side of things, uh, doing what they're doing with Android to push what iPhone could be doing or what their products could be doing. It helped when we had other competing platforms too, like Windows Phone, the sort of like glorious moment when we had Windows Phone and Android and iPhone, and everyone was just like trying to figure out the mobile web. It was so cool and so exciting, and people were taking features from each other that made these products better. That's evolution, right?
Yeah, but also can't help but think that this is like a halfway measure, and
Mhm.
what actually should be broken up is Google's ad business.
That's never
Because,
gonna happen. That
well,
is Google. Yeah.
but that's
Mhm.
like, when you break up Ma Bell, you're
Mhm.
breaking up, yes, like a whole telecom monopoly. The actual monopoly that exists on the internet is, okay, maybe there are
Mhm.
two. One is how you access the internet, and Chrome
Yeah.
has an enormous market share there. But two, I frequently talk about that figure I saw where it's something like 3 out of every $4 in online advertising is spent at either
Mhm.
Google or Facebook.
Yep.
So the real thing that you need to break up there, especially if you want like just a better ecosystem of advertising to support other ventures online, other smaller websites, maybe break up the big advertisers online.
Well,
But
now you're
that would
sounding
be
like a
really,
straight up
really nice.
socialist, Ben. Like
Uh-oh.
the most
Oh,
impressive
no.
thing to do. I think that would be the ideal thing to do. I think Chrome was the easy target to be like, "Hey, it's just the browser, right? It is just Google's browser. Google's real business is advertising." So, we have found that yes, Google search definitely a monopoly. Maybe we could help to like stave off that influence a little bit if we at least push Google to sell off Chrome and also stop these deals where Google can make itself the default on all these other platforms. So, I think it was like a low-hanging fruit thing,
Yeah,
that they could do.
exactly. Exactly.
Mhm. So it's funny that people are reacting like, "Oh my god, could you believe Google could do that?" Probably. I mean, potentially, and that probably would have helped things too, but we will never know. We will probably never know what it would be like if Google had to sell off Chrome because it's just gonna be just all big tech going forward, guys. It's all did you see the news, Ben, that, I think when Google CEO called the Trump administration to say congrats, right?
Yep.
Elon Musk was on the line.
Oh, I didn't see the thing about Elon. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the story I saw, but that is also where we are. Never forget about Elon Musk being such a crucial part of this, like, administration, at least right now. But he poured $200
Yeah.
million into it. He is there at Trump's ear, and you've got big tech literally just controlling the reins of government and regulation soon. So
And the
let's see what
funny
that
thing
leads to.
is that the folks who are running these companies, like Musk and like Thiel,
Hmm.
don't see themselves as big tech. They see themselves as like maybe in the middle layer because they're not Amazon, they're not
I don't
Google
know about
or
that.
maybe Facebook or
Hmm.
something. And they're like, oh, well, I'm just a scrappy little business founder.
I don't know about that. No, no, no. Like Elon Musk sees himself as the future of humanity. His children will take
He
over
sees
the earth.
himself
Like,
as the
yeah.
future of humanity, but the reason that he has such a victim
Hmm.
complex is because he's not Jeff Bezos
I don't know. He's still richer than Jeff Bezos, so he still
on
wins
paper, on
on
paper.
paper.
And I
Yeah,
think that that's what bothers him. That it's
yeah.
all like it's not all paper wealth, but it is significantly more paper wealth for Musk than it is for Bezos, and
I
that's
don't
how
know.
they measure
It could be.
themselves.
Yeah, I mean, they're all kind of like dick measuring at this point. But there's also the thing where I think there's a good argument that socially, the culture started to turn against Elon Musk when he started leaning more into right wing politics, being more of a meme lord online. I think the turning point for a lot of people was the whole the kids being trapped in a cave thing, where he
Yeah.
just lost his mind online and started calling like the dude was who was actually trying to help a pedophile and just
Yep.
like
Yep. He's like, why are you even in Thailand?
yeah.
Like only
So
weirdos go to Thailand.
that's pretty much it. And a dude bought Twitter to be king tweeter, so everybody likes his stuff and gets mad when Biden got more likes or engagement in a post than he did. So that's
And
kind of where we're at,
there's some
folks.
significant evidence that he thought that the woke mind virus turned his daughter trans, and
Yeah.
he wanted to buy the place where the woke mind virus lived.
It's
Ugh.
it's the war on woke, folks. Anyway, drop us an email at podcastinggadget.com. Let us know what you think about this. This thing that will never actually happen, but the idea of government regulation of overpowered technology companies. What a concept. Let's do some Q&A.
So I don't know if we had a like
Mhm.
definitive answer. Do you think this would include Chromebooks if we're looking at the gadget angle?
Yeah. Yeah, those are Chrome powered.
Okay, so
I don't
that
know what it
is
would
how
be.
Chrome makes money then. Chrome, the browser,
Mhm.
sells maybe like they
Nobody's
make
buying
some big
yeah,
push into becoming more of a consumer technology company.
that's
And maybe
hard.
Chrome that's
No, Chromebook
innovation.
like if this happened,
I'm
no,
sorry, go and innovate then.
Chromebooks are dead. Like if this actually happened, Chromebooks are probably dead because hardware requires a lot more expertise. Like if they're carving this off and they're just going to be okay, your Chrome is its own separate thing. The hardware people are at Google. So the people who make the Chromebooks and design the Chromebooks are at Google. The people who design the software maybe on the Chrome side. I actually don't know how that works up. But either way, you would not want to sell those things because the market for selling laptops right now is kind of tough. Even big companies like Apple and Dell like have trouble at times doing this stuff, like building the hardware, getting it out there, doing consumer support and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. How could Chrome make money? I don't know, chat. What do you think? Subscription?
Yeah.
Patreon?
Yeah,
A
because
Patreon for
people would
Chrome?
love that. People would absolutely love being able to use Chrome
Mhm,
for more than a decade, and then all of a sudden, because they're not paying attention to the news,
mhm.
in most cases, all of a sudden they get a pop-up saying, "Hey, Chrome is its own company now," and nobody knew. They were like, "Oh, I guess it was Google before,"
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it's asking for money.
I
That
don't
makes
think it would be
people
that.
annoyed.
I think it would be more like, do you want other cool features? Like, do you want a premium level of Chrome or something? Other types of features that maybe you won't get a faster some other, like, extra privacy features or something. There could be a way to do that, but
Yeah, that would
I'm
be
not
a
sure.
difficult proposition.
This is all a difficult proposition. How are we doing, chat?
So,
Declan asks, I see here, would Chrome OS be sold off with Chrome or with Android? We don't know. Chrome OS is Chrome based, but it can run Android things after some tweaks they made.
CF542 says these big tech companies get big through acquisitions. If those
Mhm.
could be countered, that would help breaking up these guys. Only Wait, breaking these guys up only
Mhm.
makes them bigger once they acquire old companies in the future.
Well,
I
the
mean,
whole point is that you also stop that too. You also
yeah.
kind of put your foot down and be like, "You can't keep gobbling up these smaller fish or these older fish." Yeah.
Yeah, what was the last big thing that was blocked? Last big merger that was blocked?
The one that I keep coming back to is NVIDIA tried to buy ARM, and that would have,
Mm.
like, completely reworked, like, the way the chip field work, especially mobile chips, and UK regulators blocked that. That was a pretty big deal. So
Also, ARM is a British-based company, right?
yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, that's important for them.
Yeah.
Also,
That
I'm
was a
thinking
$40 billion deal, Ben.
mm,
$40 billion. So they had to pay, like, billions in breakup fees when that didn't go through.
and it isn't tech specific, but,
Mhm.
there were, there was a publishing merger that was blocked.
Yep.
I think Random House wanted to buy Hachette or,
Mhm.
um what is it? I'm looking it up. They tried to block merger Penguin Random House Simon and Schuster.
Mhm.
So, two of the big five publishers tried to merge,
Yep.
and that was people said no, basically. And actually, the discovery for that case led to a bunch of interesting truths being let out in court about whether or not books make money. And the answer is that books very often do not make money, but audiobooks do.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
these publishers operate kind of like VCs where they just like throw money in a bunch of different authors' directions,
Mhm.
hoping that something becomes the next Twilight, just like, some ratty startup becomes the next Facebook. And then, when they 10x or 100x their investment, um, that's how they make the
Yep.
majority of their money to go off and do it again.
I'm glad that didn't go through. I remember that
Yeah.
would have been a bad thing for the publishing industry in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I have been exploring Blue Sky a bit more,
Mhm.
and I saw something tweeted by Mike Isaac, the New York Times like tech columnist,
Yep.
um, and he said that he's been seeing a whole lot more bumper stickers of people's like bumper stickers that said like Elon sucks or like
I bought this before, yeah.
Bought this before Elon went off the deep end or something.
Yeah.
Because how long ago was it? Maybe just 5 or so years ago.
Mhm.
Um, in between the like um Thailand diver story
Yeah.
and like this current run of stuff with
Well,
Twitter and
the
everything,
Model
where
Y came
everyone
out the Model Y, which was their cheaper the Model 3 was their cheaper one. The Model Y was the slightly bigger one. That one was wildly popular, and that was after the whole cave diver thing. So,
yeah.
people were
No, it was
yeah.
after the cave diver thing, but before he went, like, really off the rails with Twitter and,
Yeah. Yeah.
got really deep into right-wing politics,
Yeah.
and even then, a Tesla was seen as, like, one of the best things that you could do for the environment if you still had to drive around a lot, like
Mhm.
basically everyone on the West Coast does.
Yeah. It was a good story. I think, people forget that Elon took billions of dollars from the government to, like, help support him too. There's a lot of things. I saw somebody mentioned, like, Tesla almost went bankrupt several times. It is true, like, he put his fortune on the line to keep that company alive, and that's a thing, but he did not found Tesla. He's not an engineer. His biggest design contribution has been the Cybertruck, and I swear to God, every time I see one of those things on the road, Ben,
It
I
ruins
just
my
wanna get
day.
out and just, like, slap the person driving it. Like, "What are
Yeah.
you doing?"
There's a
Yeah.
Cybertruck that is parked on my street
Mhm.
now. I don't know, like, and it kind of disappears every now and then, but that's, like, not surprising because in
Yeah.
New York City, sometimes you have to park pretty far away from where you actually live in order to find a spot. But every now and then, I'm, like, walking home from the subway or something, and boom, Cybertruck.
Yeah. People keep asking, I see also Rundig is asking, how can a web browser make a profit only themselves? It is probably would be advertising of some kind or partnership deals or something. Maybe the thing is like it would be some benevolent company, but buying it and turning it into like a nonprofit organization or something. But then you're like Firefox, right? Then you're like Mozilla, and you are at the behest of like who knows whoever is actually, is sending money to you, or whatever partnership deals you make. You're not fully in control of your own destiny there too. So it's kind of rough. Microsoft is using Chromium, the open source Chromium project in Edge now. That was a big deal. That doesn't mean they couldn't buy Chrome, but I do think if the concern here is about like monopoly and monopoly influence, Microsoft has Edge. Microsoft has gone through this with an Explorer. They will never touch another web browser again.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get into other news, folks. We've got a bunch
Yep.
of things too. All right, let's move on to some other news, and also kind of related to corporate readjustments. Comcast announced that it is spinning out Rotten Tomatoes and the cable networks it owns into a separate company. Those cable networks include USA Network, remember them, CNBC, MSNBC, Oxygen, Sci-Fi, Golf Channel. They're all going to have a new home in a spin-off company, which does not have a name yet. That's kind of interesting. Comcast is hanging on to NBC Universal stuff. So that is NBC proper, which is a broadcast network, Peacock, the streaming service, film and TV studios, Telemundo, and theme parks, and Bravo.
It seems like it's
Apparently.
holding on to everything that makes them a lot of money and letting
Yeah.
go of everything that makes them only a little money or break even.
Cable's tough. Cable's a tough thing to hold right now. I don't know what you do with Rotten Tomatoes at this point too, which was such a cool, useful service when it launched, and has now just become an arm of the TV of the like movie industry, right? Like Rotten
Yeah.
Tomatoes, they also owned Fandango. Fandango's gonna be a part of the spin-off company. It is really wild to think that the company where a lot of people buy tickets from is also owning the same thing that owns the review aggregator that tells people which movies to go see. That was a weird thing. That was a weird thing when it
It's
happened.
vertical
Yeah,
integration.
it's vertical integration. I know people who worked at Rotten Tomatoes. I know they tried hard to like keep editorial, like some editorial separation there, but it's tough. Like when you're just owned by a company that just wants people to go to the movies, or make money off of that investment. So kind of an interesting thing. I wonder what they'll do with the spinoff company and what's even going to be called. Yeah.
It has the potential. This spin-off company has the potential to have a profoundly stupid name. If we know
Yeah.
anything from the Quibbies of the world.
The Quibbies, the Go 90s of the world, they're all terrible, folks. I mean, listen, I'm also a big fan of Mubi, which is the subscription service that also brought some cool movies to theaters, like The Fall. They brought back The Fall with Substance. But there's also a free version that they do called Tubi. So it's just really hard to keep all these things in track, but we'll be following this too. I saw
So
this story. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. No, go ahead. Go ahead, just
I
go
saw
on.
the story about this is kind of how we framed it. Sony's reportedly in talks to buy the Elden Ring and Dark Souls developer, because essentially they're in talks to acquire Kadokawa, which is a Japanese publisher. They own a majority stake, like 70% stake in From Software, creators of the Souls games. But they also own a bunch of things. They own the Anime News Network. They own other developers too, like was it Acquire, I believe. Yeah, Acquire is the company that made Tenchu and a bunch of other games. There's a whole bunch of anime properties and other things as part of this too. So the story here is less about Elden Ring, I'd say. I think that would be a nice get for Sony. It's more about like this is Sony potentially doing like a Marvel deal, like when Disney bought Marvel. Like there's all this stuff underneath this brand that this brand owns that could be really useful for them. So big Sony's been investing more in anime too, so it all kind of makes sense, right?
I have a feeling that people are going to be very mad about this, and I hope that it doesn't get bogged down in like
Mhm.
corporate bureaucracy, because I think that's what the fear is.
Mhm. I mean, who knows? Who knows what this is going to do? Don't forget also Sony owns Funimation is part of Sony now, which is a big anime studio, and they bought
Oh, wow.
Crunchyroll. They bought Crunchyroll from AT&T. Speaking of AT&T again, in 2021.
Wait, so
So
Sony owns Crunchyroll? I wasn't aware of that.
yeah, yep. Sony officially bought them. I don't know. There has not been any update beyond that, but yeah, they bought Crunchyroll for $1.2 billion at towards the beginning of the pandemic. It's like 2020. So
Wow.
anyway, this is more about anime than it is about Elden Ring, I would say. Did you see the story, Ben, about undersea internet cables, data cables being cut in the Baltic Sea?
Yes, yeah, and
Mm.
I think it's
Curious. I wonder what's happening there.
I wonder what city is, what major power city is on the Baltic Sea? Could it be St. Petersburg? Where is St.
Hmm.
Petersburg? So, yeah, there's a non-zero chance that this could be Russian meddling,
Hmm.
but I also wanna leave it up to, leave a little chance for there to be that it was just some other concern that was annoyed about that they didn't get to lay these undersea cables. Maybe it was like an actual corporate actor or something. I
It would
am
be a
not
hell of a
defending
time to
Russia
do it.
here.
Yeah,
I
a
am
hell of
not
a time to
defending
do that.
Russia here, but sometimes silly little things like that happen, and people are
Yeah.
like, "Wait, it isn't an international incident? That's so confusing."
It would be that's some good like 4D chess, 5D chess, right? Where you're like, yes, there is everybody's looking at Russia now. So if we do a thing and blame them,
Mhm.
probably easy to make it a whole thing. That is the entire plot of The Diplomat on Netflix. So yes, that is definitely a good like spy
Subterfuge
movie
upon
plot.
subterfuge, right?
Exactly, like, just point to an easy villain. Let me see here. So, yeah, so the story is Germany says these undersea cut the cables were definitely sabotaged, it wasn't some sort of error, and another cable connecting Lithuania and Sweden was also cut on Sunday. The timing here, especially when you're looking at Russia's war against Ukraine and kind of the news that the US would be allowing for more powerful missiles to be like
Yep.
sending more missiles to Ukraine, like it all seems like a response to that whole thing. Maybe a response to delay any other sort of action until the Trump administration comes in, and all of a sudden that whole war is over, right? Like Ukraine's just gone, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know about that. Like, we
yeah,
would really have to see
we
because,
would.
on one hand, like, yes, the a Trump administration would really like to roll over and show its belly like a dog to,
Hmm.
Putin, but on the other hand, there's a lot of, nationalist further fervor coming in there, especially if, Hegseth ends up actually as the Secretary of Defense, and so there might be some people who are like,
Yeah.
Actually nationalism is good," and Ukraine has a lot of nationalism right now. They are fighting for their country, so
Yeah. I don't know. I
could
don't
be
know,
a
Ben. First of all, we don't know if any of those nominations, that guy, the recent story about his background is, I don't think that's gonna fly. But also Tulsi Gabbard, who was nominated to lead US intelligence. Good God. Tulsi Gabbard. I have so many feelings about Indian Americans who go into politics and always just show their asses. But Tulsi, like,
it's
yeah,
it feels
very
like
much she's a Russian asset, basically.
it
So
feel yes, it feels like the, headline is "Wolf wearing silly little costume of a sheep nominated to be the, guard
head
dog
of,
of
yeah,
the
sheep
flock."
security.
Yeah, head of sheep security. Yeah.
So, that again, another nomination I don't think will actually go through, but who knows what this Congress will do now. To me, that is the worrying thing. Like we know Trump's alliances, and we kind of know that more and more people are very Russia pilled within his like
Russia
among
pilled.
his, yeah, because they're getting it doesn't matter. It's not about country, man. Like they are getting money from these people, and that's kind of just the way that's what's gonna lead them. That's what's gonna lead this entire administration. It's gonna be scary to see, folks.
So the moon in
Mhm.
the chat says Trump's appointments are just memes to gaslight the progressives and keep everyone distracted.
Oh, yeah, sure,
That
sure.
would be a great idea if we haven't already seen that this administration does not think about step 1.5.
Yeah.
They it is all id
You are
and
putting more thought
no
into it if you're thinking it's a meme just to make fun of
yeah.
progressives. Like, you are putting more thought into it than I think this administration is, where literally it's just who are my friends? Who are my
Mhm.
loyal supporters? Like, that is the fascist, playbook is essentially you want loyalty rather than expertise in among the people in charge around you, and he is picking the loyalist people around him. So, there are insane choices. Frickin' the co-founder of the WWE, the head of education.
Linda McMahon.
We are full on idiocracy, folks.
Yeah,
Full on
seriously. Yeah,
idiocracy. So
seriously.
I don't think it's just trolling. Like these are legit things. They may not ever actually come to pass, but these are the legitimate things that they are trying to do. And I have to say, every time somebody's like, "Oh yeah, they're just joking," yada yada yada. I don't know. That still ended up with a lot of people being hurt. It ended up with being families being separated at the border. It ended up with kids in immigration camps at the border. The stupidity still leads to like really, really painful outcomes for people, even if you think it's a joke. So yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that I have to like only advice that I have for listeners going into this new era
Hmm.
is don't pay so much attention to the palace intrigue of the next 4 years, e especially all of the MSNBC, like, "Oh,
Hmm.
I hope, everyone in the White House has a headache and diarrhea," and, like
Yeah.
because there is a lot of, like, "I just wish these people are having a bad day,"
Hmm.
or, like, taking joy in the idea that, somebody is having a bad day or is having, a small scandal or something. Look beyond that and just look at the vector of where policy is going.
Hmm.
Go head that off. Everyone who's listening to this is very likely smart enough to know where things are going. So just cast your mind in that direction rather than spending so much time watching the like tiny little details dribble out of an administration where everyone hates each other and they
Hmm.
come from a culture where cooperation is not valued.
It's gonna be, I don't know. It's gonna be a thing to watch. Uh, I know you want to talk about this, Ben, the whole Pokemon Go thing, or the Niantic essentially saying that they used the data from Pokemon Go and their other games to create a large geospatial AI powered model of the
Yes.
world.
Yeah.
It
Uh,
is, yeah. Go ahead.
this is spooky, but not surprising.
Hmm.
Let's remember the fact that Niantic was initially founded by, I think, a former intelligence guy.
It was
If it
part
wasn't
of Google for a while too,
It
wasn't
was
it?
part
Yeah.
of Google for a
Yeah.
while. So it was founded by John Hankey, and in 2001, and it got money from the CIA's venture capital fund.
Hmm.
So if he wasn't an intelligence guy before, he went into this with intelligence aspirations. It was purchased by Google in 2004. The original Niantic, or the original name for Niantic, was Keyhole Inc.
Hmm.
And then from 2004 to about 2015, it was part of Google and it focused on games, and then it spun out as Niantic in 2015, focused on games. Pokemon Go Summer was 2016. While it was at Google, let's be really, really cognizant of what
Hmm.
was happening at Google at that time. They wanted to turn users into a mechanical Turk.
Right.
Think about
Right.
how they were also, very enthused with Luis van Ahn and all of his work that he did with reCAPTCHA, because they were trying to digitize all the books, and reCAPTCHA was really instrumental in getting humans to figure out a word that their optical software couldn't
Hmm.
figure out. So this is very much like they're taking a lot of information from the Google playbook and saying, okay, well, what if we just had the users do work for us? Von On's later company, Duolingo, runs on that same idea. I was a very part-time producer for a show called The Genius Dialogues, I think,
Hmm.
that came out through Audible. And these were, a bunch of people who had won MacArthur Genius Grants. One of the interviews was Louis van Ahn, and he's like, "Yeah, that's actually one of the big things that I brought to Google and brought to computer science. Period.
Hmm.
I wanted to use users, 5 minutes a day or so to." Um, be a better computer than the computers that they had at the time. So it makes so much sense that Niantic is now using all of the information that it gathered via Pokemon Go, via the Harry Potter Pokemon Go similar game. And now they
Hmm.
also have this Pikmin game where people are just walking around, creating maps. Um, and now all phones have LiDAR. Wow. Wow. So, yes, they are doing this large geospatial model, similar to an LLM.
Hmm.
And I think the thought among a lot of people is that this is going to power Maybe the Boston Dynamics robo dogs of the future or something. Make
Well,
it
it could be.
much easier for them to navigate in like large spaces.
I mean, this is, yeah, again, they've been doing this from the start too. Like, so I'm not too surprised about this model because forever, Niantic has been talking about like we just want to gather a lot of location data, and that's been through the lens of Pokemon Go and a lot of the games they've said. I wrote up something that they did. Let me see here. They're Yeah, Campfire, they had, like, something called Campfire, which was a social app they wanted to make as sort of like a Discord alternative. They were trying to get people to, like, think more about the stuff that they're doing locally, but yeah, it just kind of fully makes sense. Let me see here, Niantic's Campfire app. I'm looking for a story, yeah. So in 2022, they announced this thing called Lightship VPS, or Virtual Positioning System. It was a new platform that let developers accurately learn the position and orientation of users with centimeter level precision. So this is an idea. They've been gathering this data for a while. The idea of turning it into like an AI model, I guess, is sort of new, but this is the thing. They've wanted to sell this data to do more accurate stuff around location based tasks in general. Like if I don't know if you've ever used Google Maps when you're walking around, Ben, but
Oh,
the
have
thing
I?
that yeah, the thing like where you actually get turn by turn directions. So one thing that Niantic mentioned in their blog post around this news is that essentially they're thinking of like AR glasses too, where you're wearing AR glasses and you get like really granular directions and instructions, and this model could help to power some of that stuff. It's not entirely evil thing. I think it'll help a lot of people because it's really, I remember life driving before GPS was a nightmare. Being able to like walk accurately if you're wearing smart goggles could be useful. But yeah, it's I could see why people could be freaked out about this. How are you feeling about the idea of this thing?
So Ruindig in the chat
Mhm.
says, let's not forget that Niantic founder and CEO John Hankey was also on the Google Geo team.
Yep.
So yeah,
This is, I'm sure Google
around
has
the
been
time when
thinking of this.
Keyhole
Yeah.
was acquired, this was when Google was really trying to build up Google Maps, and so this makes so much sense. He's just a maps guy.
Mhm.
Um, what I have to say about this is that if there is a new Niantic game that wants you to scan the interior of your house or apartment or office building, absolutely don't download it.
You're doing it already, Ben. You're doing it already when you're looking for Pokemon in your house. It's not right. They don't have to ask you to just go around scanning. They could just, hey, here's a thing you want to collect. Take out your LiDAR, your personal LiDAR, and give us that data, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and what we will give you is Pokemon.
Yeah.
What you give us is very granular information on how to allow a Boston Dynamics robot to kick in your door, and you
Mhm.
get Pikmin.
You get Pikmin. Another thing they brought up is that it'll teach the models things about things they haven't seen. Sort of like if there's enough, if you're like behind a church and it doesn't have like accurate data around that specific church, it can interpolate what the back part of a church would be like based on the data of collected thousands of their other churches they've seen. So they could like interpolate what the architecture could be or something like that. So it's a way this stuff could fill in the gap for information they don't have either. That is kind of interesting, but yeah, I don't know what this is gonna lead to. I don't know if
Oh,
smart
okay.
glasses
So
will be a
Declan in
thing.
the chat is
Yeah.
saying, I wonder if Amazon is doing the same thing with that see in your room option on their app. So, if you wanted to use
Oh, yeah.
augmented reality to see how like a couch would fit in your room,
Yep.
what you're doing is sweeping, excuse me,
Mhm.
you're sweeping your phone around your room. And yeah, you're trying to figure out like
Mhm.
where the couch fits and everything. But what you're actually also doing is exactly what they want you to do,
You're
which
showing them the
is
layout of your room, and the
yeah,
problem before was they have all this data. It's really hard to do anything with it if you just have a ton of data, but with AI models, there is more of a chance where you could use an LLM to kind of train the idea of what do living rooms look like now? What kind of devices would fit ideally in a living room today? That sort of thing you could train an LLM to eventually do. And I don't know. It's
What
inescapable unless you just don't use those tools at all. Anything that involves your camera, especially the 3D mapping of your space, that stuff is potentially dangerous if you're worried. Yeah.
one, LGM, not LLM,
Mhm.
because geospatial. And
Yes, yes, yes.
two, let's connect this with the idea of
Any
from
large model, yeah.
what was it, a year ago or maybe a couple years ago when Roomba was they were talking about, maybe it was mapping the inside of your house
Mhm.
because just by like running into all of the corners and the walls in the room, it is developing
A
the
map.
general sense of,
Yeah.
yes, a map of your room and everything. Yeah, man-made horrors beyond our comprehension coming soon.
If they have the data, they will try to sell it, and I think in general we can see these companies want to collect the data. The question is, what do they do with it? And that is more of what I'm worried about. And if you're worried about this stuff, then just be careful about these types of devices that you use. Yeah.
Yeah, so, bringing it down to much more petty news, the Bitfinex hacker launderer, Heather Razzle Khan Morgan was sent
Razzlecon.
yeah, Razzle Khan was sentenced to 18 months in prison. More than a
Just
year
you
ago
gotta live to see it. You gotta live to see it because these people have annoyed me for so long. But yeah.
Yeah, more than a year ago when we were talking about crypto a lot more, although it seems like we're going to be talking about crypto for a longer time, because boy, did those stocks jump on election night.
Mhm.
Um, or not stocks, but the value of
The
various
value jumped, and,
cryptocurrencies.
there were so much money being poured in from crypto people, and Trump himself, a big crypto person who has essentially made Doge a part of the administration.
Well, yeah, he's
Wonder what you
wanted
think
to.
about wonder how that all ties together, but yeah.
Yeah. So, in 2016, her husband hacked Bitfinex. She helped launder 120,000 Bitcoin,
Mhm.
which was worth a lot then and is worth a lot more now. But still, I think we were talking about millions of dollars
Yeah.
even back in 2016. And then what did they do with it? They did the most gaudy windfall, new money shit you could imagine.
Yeah.
The Razzlecon moniker, if you don't know about it, you will know sometime soon because Netflix is coming out with a documentary about this whole Bitcoin heist. And she shot a music video. She's looking very Burning Man
Yeah.
in these
Yeah.
big glasses and like cheetah print jacket. I think she was shooting it down in Lower Manhattan, like in front of the stock exchange,
Mhm.
talking about she said that she was like the Bitcoin crocodile or something in this rap that was terrible. It was bad, everybody.
Yeah. I remember. It was so dumb, and that was certainly the peak of, like, I just hate all the crypto people. I think there was a point where I was like, "Man, it would have been very smart to mine 1 Bitcoin in 2009 when all this stuff, or 2010 when it was all very, very early." But now it's just like, "Oh, these are the worst people," which is it sucks because some people did make a lot of money. Like, this stuff did materially
I know
like
someone
yeah,
who paid for the down payment on their house in
yeah.
crypto. Well, not they didn't transfer crypto to the
Mhm.
bank, but they had crypto, they sold it for
Yeah.
USD, and they paid for their apartment or their condo in Boston with that.
That is, I guess, the dream, but also, like, yeah, that was before we knew more about the material costs of crypto and kind of, I think especially the environmental costs. Like, that was something that people did not fully understand early on, and I think that became more and more gross as this whole thing, like any gold rush, any like, new money rush to power and money, like it is gross to see. There is a Netflix documentary coming out, and I
Yep.
tried watching the trailer for that thing, Ben, and good God, I don't think that's gonna be any good. Netflix makes a lot of bad documentaries. I hope this one is better than at least this
They're
trailer.
very yes, they're very sensational. I think they've
Mhm,
learned Netflix in general has learned a lot from like 48 Hours Mysteries and not
mhm.
quite enough from Ezra Edelman.
Netflix, well, it's more like the people who make documentaries for Netflix know that they could do kind of a subpar job. They could just make like a shitty thing,
Oh yeah,
and
because they're
it can
making stuff for like
yeah.
USA Network. Could
So
bring it
and
back to
it'll
something we were just talking about.
yeah, it'll get a decent amount of views on Netflix, and then, like, you don't have to really put as much effort as, like, the Errol Morrises of the world used to, you know?
Yeah. I
Mhm,
mean, and Ezra Edelman
mhm,
actually does have a Netflix documentary about Prince, an
mhm.
enormous thing that is now held up by Prince's estate. Go look up some
I
articles
really
about
wanna
that
see
because that
that,
was
yeah,
so much fun to read.
yeah.
I want to see that so badly. And like, he might be fully gray by the time that comes out, if it comes out.
That's a shame, and that also goes down to, like, Prince's estate and Prince's whole thing around his own image and everything, like, that was just who he was. That's even less of a Netflix problem, you know, but man, would love to see that eventually.
Yeah, so one last word on
Mhm,
Razalkhan. The prosecution noted, I'm reading from a CoinDesk article now. The prosecution noted how deeply she was involved, or no, excuse me. The prosecution the
mhm,
prosecution noted how deeply involved she was in seeking to conceal and use the millions her husband stole, sharing examples of her subterfuge, including personally burying gold coins acquired with the cryptocurrency. She was the one that dug the hole, a lawyer from the prosecution said. She jumped into the conspiracy. And all she has to say for herself is a video tweeted on X where she's looking very much like Heather and very much not like Razzle Khan in
mhm.
pearl necklace and everything, saying, "Guys, I'm so sorry."
So sorry, so sorry. I did not wanna hear about these people again, but okay, kinda good to hear, like, there's something, some sort of punishment for this thing.
There's going to be a lot of people that don't get comeuppance in the next few years, so let's
Mhm.
take a second to appreciate when that does happen.
What do you mean, Ben? I think the justice system and our entire system is working perfectly, you know? Nobody's untouchable. Nobody's a king. Let's move on to what we're working on. I just want to shout out. I wrote up a review write up about Dragon Age: The Veilguard. I've put about 20 hours into that game so far. Good game. Good Dragon Age. Also good time to be like building a ragtag group of people fighting extreme evil against all odds and seeming doom. So you know that kind of works out really well. Do you play Dragon Age at all, Ben?
No, I actually can't remember the last BioWare game I played. It might have
Really?
been Mass Effect.
Hmm. Which Mass Effect?
It was probably yeah, it was Mass Effect 3.
Mass Effect. Oh, that was a while ago. What is
Mhm.
that? Is that a decade now?
If it
Oh,
wasn't a
shit.
decade, it was, like 8 or so
It
years.
feels like 20 years ago at this point. But
Okay, so tell
anyway,
me, why should I be playing Dragon Age? Why should I be getting
I
back
don't
into
know.
BioWare?
It's good stuff. Like it's pretty much a really fun. They've turned it more into like an action RPG almost. Like the combat now is very much like the newer God of War, which itself is lifted a little bit from the Souls games. So there's more like direct combat. You could still have your your friends kind of issue spells and whatnot, but it feels good. It looks incredible. As I said in my review, like this is some of the best ray tracing I've ever seen. So, you know, sometimes you just want spectacle. Sometimes you just want like realistic lighting of magical effects being deployed across huge environments. I think it looks good, it feels good, and you get the wonderful like companion stuff too, like just hanging out with people. It feels good. And this game has been in development for 10 years. It's been rebooted several times.
It does.
Yeah, yeah, so I'm surprised, like, it's been 10 years since Dragon Age Inquisition. This directly follows the story of Inquisition and the DLC of that. There were some major revelations that came out from the DLC in that game. So, I'm digging it. I'm not, like, the biggest Dragon Age fan, but for what I'm doing, like, for where I am right now, it was really nice to spend a couple hours just in a fantasy world doing fun RPG things. And yeah, Bioware still got it. I hope some of this translates to whatever new Mass Effect thing they're doing because uh I I loved Mass Effect the trilogy. Then Andromeda happened and I don't know what the hell happened there. So, yeah.
Yeah, true. I think that they were trying to I mean, Andromeda was Mass Effect: The Quest for More Money,
Mhm.
and I think that's what sunk the entire series.
Yeah.
Um, because in so many cases, like with Halo, they want to eventually come out with a Halo or Mass Effect, 2K24,
Mhm.
2K25, so they can keep this going. But I think what a lot of the like business people in these game companies don't really understand is that the brands actually appreciate in value, sort of like wine, when you aren't getting a new game.
Hmm.
So imagine there was a 6 year or longer time between one, the end of the Mass Effect trilogy and the next Mass
Hmm.
Effect game. I think people would be like, "Wow, I'm so looking forward to being
Yeah, you
back
get a
in
little
this
hype for it.
world."
Yeah,
Yeah,
sort of like being
versus
oversaturated with Star Wars or
yeah,
even the Marvel stuff. Like you got to miss it a little bit to really want it again. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Kevin says in the chat that these games are basically big budget movies now. Yeah, sure, but I think that, big budget movie IP also appreciates if you aren't having, a new Mission Impossible movie every 2 years.
Hmm.
We saw that for Marvel especially, and we were literally just talking about that.
Hmm. Hmm. So anyway, good game, good Dragon Age. I think you'd like it, Ben. It's a good entry point into the series, but you should probably go watch some lore videos so you can know what the hell is happening in the world of Dragon
I
Age.
do like lore videos.
It's a good bit of lore stuff there too. And something I want to shout out. I'm not quite working on it, but I am. I just picked up a new receiver for my home theater system, and after I reviewed the PlayStation 5 Pro, I realized like I have basically one from 10 years ago that can do 4K, but it can't do the newer stuff. It can't do 4K 120 FPS. It can't do, I don't care about 8K, but if I ever test 8K devices, I'm like not in a situation to deal with that. And this has some of Sony's new immersive surround sound technology too. I wanted to play around with some of that stuff. So I've picked up Sony's STR AN1000 receiver, which came out, I think, last year. It's been heavily discounted. They likely have a new thing coming during CES, but I just want to say, like, what an upgrade this was for my home theater, because I had a really nice Harman Kardon receiver before, but I don't know if it's the calibration or what. But this thing is like pumping my speakers and my subwoofer harder in
Mm,
a way that feels more cinematic. And it just could be Sony's processing. It's sort of like that way with TVs too. Like Sony will often use the same panels that LG uses on their OLEDs, but Sony's image processing does more work, and some people tend to prefer it. So at least on this receiver, I can really feel the difference with Sony's audio technology at this point. And my walls are shaking. So my wife loves
and
that.
you're happy about that, right?
I love to have my walls shake. And yeah, it's a good thing. Good receiver, and we're prepping for CS. So I wonder if this means like they have something else cooking for CS time. One of my favorite bits of CS, I'll be going actually for the first time since before the pandemic,
Wow.
is seeing the stuff, seeing the TVs, hearing the speakers. And it's rare to actually be surrounded by that stuff and to like relate to you all what it actually looks and feels and sounds like. So it'll be interesting to see what Sony and Samsung and everybody has cooking there. Anything you want to shout out, Ben?
No, just throw to me for
Let's go
picks.
picks. Okay. All right. Let's move on to our pop culture picks. What do you got, Ben?
I am so McGee pilled, Devindra.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know about this, like,
Which McGee?
musician? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is
American
M
McGee? No.
no, this is M and it's definitely not McGee,
Uh-huh.
or no, Mick G, the
Yes.
director.
Not the
No, this
McGee. Yep.
is, MK.GEE, a musician. First saw
Uh-huh.
things about this guy on TikTok, and I am very suspicious of anything that I see first on TikTok because
Agreed.
I'm also like, I'm not sure if it's, a big record concern that's trying to push this to me, or if this is someone who had, a popular song in, a teen movie on Netflix or
Mm-hmm.
something, and that's not the sort of thing that I would like. I just saw, okay, here's a guy, it seems to be like very vocal forward. He's it sounds a little bit like an 80s heartthrob magazine. And I'm like, all right, maybe
Okay.
I'm not sure if
Okay.
I'm not sure if I would like this. But then I started seeing him everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I follow Haley Williams on Instagram, and she's posting Instagram stories about like, oh, I just got back from tour. They were Paramore was opening for Taylor Swift on the Europe Eras Tour dates, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sad that I didn't get to see McGee in Nashville. I'm finally back home now." I'm like, "Okay, that's a cosign from someone that I
Mhm,
respect."
mhm.
I see a headline just a few days later that Eric Clapton is like, "Oh yeah, this new musician MK.GEE is, he's I'm messing with him. I really like him." And I'm like, "All right,
Okay, okay.
that's definitely something to pay attention to." And so I listened to his not debut album. I think this is his second album, Two Star and the Dream Police.
Mhm,
And oh my God, if you like Genesis, if you like The Police, if
mhm.
people are comparing this guy a little bit to Prince,
What's old is new again, as always.
what's
Yeah.
old is new again. I'm surprised that it took this long for like the 80s style of production to
Mhm.
come all the way back around.
This guy was I'm looking at his Wikipedia, he was born in 1997. So it's
Mhm.
very much like he's looking at the retro music to him.
Yes, yeah, no,
It's
this
funny.
this music is retro to him, and
Mhm.
honestly, to, some of the Zoomers who are listening to it, this music is retro to their parents
Sure, sure. I
because
mean,
they're
isn't this is the Chappelle Roan thing too? Where like her music it feels very retro and
yes,
very
yeah,
80s
no, it
inspired.
it
Yeah.
feels kind of Madonna, it
Yeah.
feels kind of, Kate Bush,
Mhm.
um but this guy is also, like, a fantastic guitarist
Cool,
and,
cool.
like, really, really intriguing producer. If you're interested in anything like this, go check out McGee, go check out Two Star and the Dream Police, and
Mhm.
also, check out this other album. I think it's called Absolutely by, this, like, R&B artist, Dijon.
Mhm.
Let
Oh, I
me
love Dijon. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, yes, it's okay, yeah, I was right. I was fact checking myself, so
Mhm.
I'm gonna cut that other bit out.
Okay.
But Mr. Michael Gordon, aka McGee, did a lot of production and a lot of guitar work on that album. So check that out. I think it's worth it.
Very cool, very cool. Thank you. Well, I have a whole new sound setup, Ben, so I'm looking for things to test it with. And what I like when I get new audio gear, like new speakers and whatever, is just like crank the stuff I know, but also find new things. So I'm gonna check this out. I was recently doing like FK Twigs's most recent stuff. She has a new music video that
If
is
we're
like,
talking about vocal layering, Twigs
yes,
does
Twigs,
fantastic vocal layering, and
Twigs.
go and listen to Rockman by McGee.
Mhm.
I haven't heard vocal harmonies like that, honestly, since like Genesis or The Police.
All
It's
right.
really impressive.
Awesome. Some things I want to shout out. I re-reviewed Gladiator over at the Filmcast, and just want to say that movie still rips. That movie, it feels really weird to watch Gladiator like 24 years after it came out and to remember like what a cultural phenomenon it was. The score, everything, Russell Crowe in it. It's not a perfect movie. I think there's a lot of like silly bits, but it is so like memorably written. There's some great quotes, just like great ripping revenge story. We're gearing up to review Gladiator 2, which I have not seen yet. I hope it's good, but recent Ridley Scott movies have made me very worried about like what he can do now. But yeah, Gladiator's still good, guys. Gladiator still rips. That Hans Zimmer score. I actually need to re-watch the opening scene with the new receiver. Noted. Mental thing I need to do now. Because the Gladiator, the opening fight was like for the longest time, if you had a home theater, that was your like demo. That was like, what does that fight sound like as you get new speakers or whatever? So Gladiator still rips. Also want to quickly shout out Dune Prophecy, which just kicked off on HBO Max. This is the prequel series set 10,000 years before the whole story of Paul Atreides and everything. It's about the sort of formation of the Bene Gesserit and the beginning of the plan to make like an ultimate Dune leader or something. It suffers from prequelitis because you know kind of where this will all lead, but I'd say it's vaguely watchable. And talking about like how we're worried about AI and everything, minor spoiler, but we do get a glimpse of the AI war that they often talk about and why they don't use thinking machines in the Dune universe. In the very first 5 minutes, it's an opening that feels like Terminator 2 almost, and even that scene feels like a Terminator thing. But it really brought me back into this world. I love the lead actors. Emily Watson and Olivia Williams are starring in this. Mark Strong is the Emperor this time around. It's interesting. kind of just like existing in the Dune world and seeing this production. Like it looks like the movies. It doesn't feel like a cheap TV show. But I don't know where this is going to lead. I don't know if this season will be worth watching overall. But I dig the vibes and I dig like just seeing more of this universe. If you like Dune, you want to see more Dune, watch at least the first episode or at least the first couple minutes of Dune Prophecy. And that's it for me.
Okay. Everybody stick around because we're going to keep on talking to chat for a little bit after this, but I'm going to do the outro for the audio version. So thank you everybody for listening. All right, that's it for us. Thank you everybody for listening. Our theme music is by game composer Dale North. Our outro music is by our former managing editor Terrence O'Brien. The podcast is produced by me, Ben Ellman. You can find Devindra online at
Devindra on Blue Sky and Mastodon and wherever. And I podcast about movies and TV at the Filmcast at thefilmcast.com.
I have a shiny new Blue Sky account that Devindra doesn't follow. You can find me at Bellman.
You haven't messaged me yet. I didn't know if you were there.
No, I followed you, but let me get this crisp.
Ben, I don't think you understand what's happening on Blue Sky right now. The following feed is just like, oh, another 100 people have followed you in the last hour.
Oh, well, isn't that nice? Because you had thousands of followers on Twitter, and all
that
I had
took forever
was like
to build.
700.
But yeah, the whole Blue Sky thing. I will follow Ben, and if you follow me and message me and say you listen to the Engadget podcast, I'll try to follow you.
Okay, yes, but let me get this crisp outro because it does sound good. So I have a shiny new Blue Sky account that Devindra doesn't follow. You can follow me at heybellman.bluesky.social. Send us an email at podcast.engadget.com. Leave us a review on iTunes, and you can subscribe on anything that gets podcasts. Pocket Casts, Overcast, is that still a thing? And Spotify. Okay, thanks everybody for bearing with us during that.
Thank you.
What were we looking for? So Franklin Goodwin, is it Franklin? Yes, Franklin Goodwin said, do you like the music of Phil Collins? People have been comparing McGee's production on this new album to Phil Collins.
It's
very
seeing
multi-layered.
All the TikToks of like, hey, Gen Z finding old music. Whenever they get to Phil Collins, they're like, what is happening? Why is this so glorious? Yes, Phil Collins rules. I was
and I mean the way in is always what's that song with the really epic drum solo?
Oh yeah, the night. Yeah. In the air tonight.
Yeah. Oh, is it In the Air Tonight?
Yes. From Miami Vice.
Yeah.
Most
yeah. So and this this is by Phil Collins. Never have rack toms been better used or better mic'd. And then Franklin Goodwin also says, oh, McGee is like dyslexic MGK, like Machine Gun Kelly. And I'm going to be really real with you. That is one of the reasons I was suspicious about this. Because I was like, oh, okay, here's like a cool looking, like skinny guy in his 20s. And, you know, his music is very vocal forward. I didn't know whether or not this was a legitimate musician or a model who has been, you know, doing a huge culture vulture tour in an attempt to stay famous. Like,
he looks a lot like Machine Gun Kelly too. So it's like,
yeah. So I don't want to give credit to SNL for me finally like crystallizing on, oh, I like this musician.
Sometimes you need it.
I have to admit that I was looking down the list of musical guests that were going to be on SNL, and I was like, oh, wow, okay. I've seen this guy so many times, you know, through Paramore and Eric Clapton, and wow, now he's going to be on SNL. And I watched the SNL performances. They were good. SNL performances are notably like a real mixed bag.
Yes.
So the fact that they were as good as they were, that's
great.
Even more power to him. There were like so many YouTube comments saying, we need a live album. We need a live album. Like this guy was just birthed into fame within the last 9 months and people are already requesting a live album. I think that says something.
That says something. Did you see the wave of support for the that Tiny Desk concert, Ben? the Catriel and Paco Amoroso one.
No, but I mean,
That
I'm
was
a big
all over.
supporter
That
of
was on
Tiny Desk
TikTok for
anyway.
literally weeks, but go check out that set. It's from October 4th. I'm listen, NPR I feel like has kind of been
Oh wait,
disappointing when
no,
it comes to
I
noise
think I
lately.
might have seen something about
You've
that. Yeah,
probably
keep
seen it
on
because
going.
it's been like shared around a ton. But I've been playing that like on and off, and my kids freaking love it. My wife, who's Puerto Rican, like loves when we play music that is actually Spanish. So
Mm,
she like the kids are just kind of loving that whole thing. I love these little bits, even though it seems like, oh, you're just like liberal nerdy person because you're finding music through SNL or NPR. Sometimes it's good shit. That's
yeah,
all. The
yeah,
Kamasi Washington thing on Tiny Desk as well. Good stuff. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I don't know if I would be as much of a fan of Anderson .Paak if it wasn't
Mhm.
for the Anderson .Paak Tiny Desk concert.
Yes. Yes.
I have said to many people that I would pay Beyonce money. I would very
Mhm.
easily drop $1,000. And I don't have $1,000 to drop right now, but I
Uh-huh.
would try to drop $1,000 on a very small, like Anderson .Paak and the Free Nationals show,
Uh-huh.
that emulated the like Tiny Desk feel, where there was a lot of like back and forth with the audience, and they took requests, or he took requests, and
Mhm.
somebody at NPR was like, "Hey, play this really dirty song that you did with
Yep.
Knowledge," and
Yep.
he was like, "Oh wow, I didn't know that NPR people got down like that," and then it
Yep.
was a very good cover.
I think what you're describing is sort of like almost like a VR experience, Ben, or
Oh, get out of
the
here.
Vision Pro
Don't
thing.
find the gadget
Yes.
angle on this.
That is the Vision Pro. I don't know if you ever get a chance to do it, but the Vision Pro Alicia Keys concert, which literally it feels like you're just in a room and Alicia Keys is giving you a concert. It's kind of wild. I do think like more artists are going to do things like that.
So Tom Rogers in the
Mhm.
chat says Silk Sonic was way too good to stay together. I
Yes.
mean, both of
Yes.
these musicians are like at the peak of their
It was
careers.
always a
So
temporary thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was always going to be a temporary thing. But when things don't end acrimoniously,
Mhm.
when you end up winning as many Grammys as they did, they could come back together in 5 years, in
Easy.
10 years, and
Yeah.
do another Silk Sonic album. Like, um, yeah, they did one little tour, or yeah, did they do a tour, or was
I
it
don't even
just
know.
a Vegas residency? Because, Bruno Mars has been trapped in Vegas for
Yes.
reasons.
I think he likes it. I think he
But
just likes Vegas. What was the whole
sure,
thing like
sure.
he owes people money too,
Yeah,
right?
there
Yeah.
is high speculation that he
Yeah.
owes a lot of people money, and, he's paying it back through, a Vegas
That's
residency,
the way to
but,
do it. I need to do more live shows in general. That's one thing that I just have never really had
well,
the
yeah, and you're getting
yeah,
to the point
to
where
provide.
Sophia might be able to really appreciate them, so
Maybe eventually. Well, I can't have the fun concert experience anymore.
yeah,
But yeah, how's chat doing? I think we can wind it down.
yeah. Declan says, "Have you seen the Cadbury chocolate advert with the gorilla and In the Air Tonight? If not, take 5
Yes.
minutes and watch it. It's
Yes.
epic."
It's
I
good
haven't
stuff.
seen it, and the fact that you said
It
advert
is
probably means that it's not on US TV.
I think I've seen it on US TV. I've seen it somewhere.
Oh, and people in the chat are following each other on Blue Sky. Isn't that cute? I'm very curious to see what ends up happening with Blue Sky, especially Blue Sky leadership.
Mhm.
Saw an interview with Jay. What
Yeah.
is her last name? Jay.
Jay Blue Sky.
Well, I mean, her first name is
Jay
literally
Graber.
Blue Sky
Graber.
in
Yeah.
yeah, Jay Graber. First name literally Blue Sky in Mandarin.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm just curious. It it was interesting, but
Mhm.
it feels like we don't know enough about the philosophy behind Blue Sky to throw all of our eggs in that basket.
I don't know. I understand like why it's tough to do any of this. Like the stuff they've been talking about seems at least like high-minded in a way that is more interesting than a lot of the other, social networks we've seen. But again, anything can fall apart. I'm prepared, like in Heat, to get out the door or leave everything behind if I have to.
Yeah.
So yeah. All
But
right.
right now, it seems so many people are saying, "Oh, Blue Sky is so nice. I get to talk to my friends." Start a Discord server. Like
No, it's not the same. Not the
yeah,
same.
I understand that what people really want is to be able to like converse with their acquaintances.
Well, converse with anybody, literally Anybody. The power of Twitter was that for the longest time, if you wanted to talk with people on the internet, oh, you had to go to a little chat room. You could go to
Yeah.
IRC or go to a forum or something. And Twitter was just the thing where you could be like, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
What's up, internet? And everybody can start talking to you. And there are downsides and pluses to that. But it was the exact opposite of a closed Facebook, right? Which was only for college people or only for the people who were on Facebook.
Yeah.
That openness, I miss that. And I feel like we're getting that. And I'm also seeing people that I used to talk to on Twitter who kind of drifted away. And it feels like old friends coming back when we can sit and like have a conversation. Yeah.
I just still
Yep.
think that Twitter, Blue Sky, everything similar is kind of a very sassy LinkedIn for whatever insert professional
Whatever.
sphere here. I
Nothing
call
wrong
it a
with that.
sassy LinkedIn for media people. You could call
Mhm.
Mastodon a very sassy LinkedIn for programmers.
There's no sassiness in Mastodon. There's no sassiness in Mastodon. Trust me. Trust me. Because I think one of the reasons I got a little bored with Mastodon because it's really just like you ever be in a computer lab and you're just like hang out with the people in the computer lab. Not always sassy. They will
Mhm.
have their computer jokes. They'll have their
Yeah.
techie jokes, but the energy is kind of the thing I'm enjoying. Anyway, right now it's good. Join us in Blue
Yep.
Sky, folks.
Yep.
Thank you. I think you can wrap.
Yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Camera switching done kind of lazily by me. OBS done by Devindra. Thank you, chat, for remembering stuff that we forgot. You made the show better today by helping out on the history of Niantic's CEO
Yes.
and how important
Good
he
call.
was to Google Maps.
Good call.
So you make the show better every day or every episode, and come back and do that again sometime. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, folks. We're out.